Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show we're talking about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 2, Episode 6 of Only Murders in the Building. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, there's that scene where... When it was a crime scene, and at first I was like, is this a cop that's working alongside Detective Williams? Are we going to see her brought on a crime scene? And it's not. It took a couple seconds, and before we even saw Charles, I was like, oh my god, it's the Brazos reboot, isn't it? I was like, right, because he's playing like the uncle role, and I was like, oh, that's. Because they did say that they were designing the series in a way they could kind of easily kill off the character if they need to, if he ever gets arrested. So. And lo and behold, I love to see, I thought it was so neat that, we are getting more Lucy, so it's nice that she is going to be more in his life, but also the fact is that we see Saz again, and he's like, Saz, I think I can roll a wheelchair. She's like, no. I'm your, stunt double in life to do everything that you can't physically and emotionally do. I got you, buddy. You know, and it's like, okay, Joy, get me ready for the draw. Which I kept looking at the actress who plays Joy. I'm like, why does she look so familiar? It felt, well, I guess it's understandable. If you've seen the show Evil, the actress's name is, I don't know if it's Andrea or Andrea, how she might want to, how it's pronounced. Andrea or Andrea Martin, who plays Sister Andrea on Evil, because obviously on Evil mainly because she has a habit on, because she's a nun, so she's a sister of the church, so that's that. Plus she's also wearing glasses. But I was like, listening to her and seeing her, I was like, why does Joyce seem so familiar? But also it seems like there could be something between her and Charles, but Charles is kind of caught up with everything with Jen, which we'll get to in a second. But it's like, yeah, he's like, no, there's nothing, she's not my type. It's like, mentally stable, not incarcerated, it's like, yeah. Emotionally available and stuff like that. It's like, he's just saying, like, I'm not really ready to kind of jump into a relationship, because he ends up finding out from Jan he kind of is in one. He's like, is this wrong? And she's like, why? We're a couple. And he's like, wait, didn't we break up? She's like, what? I've been under the assumption we've been together this entire time. He's like, why would you think we broke up? And he's like, well, she's like, well, because I tried to kill you? No. And he's like, okay. And she's talking about how he's like, because she's like, oh, people twirl phone cords because they're either hormonal teenagers or uneasy. So she's like, what do I make you feel like a hormonal teenager? But it's like, no, I make you feel uneasy. Because he's like, yeah, you are kind of scary because you are a killer. But it's like, she's like, yeah, I still love you despite everything. It's like, that's twisted, and Charles just not knowing how to handle that. Mabel's in a relationship, continuing her relationship with Alice. Side note, not knowing that Alice is kind of a liar, and Mabel kind of deals with stuff later on, but we'll kind of circle back around that. But either way, things are nice and easy with Alice because Alice is someone new. Because the subject of her father comes up and is like, oh, what have I told you about my father? She was like, Alice was like, practically nothing. She's like, I think it's preferred that way because so many people are obsessed with her past. Being with Alice, I don't think she probably doesn't realize, like, she's so gung-ho about it, because obviously even her relationship with Oscar is like, it was always going to be tied to all this darkness, to this past stuff. And so being in this relationship with Alice, which is someone new that's not connected to her past, it's like she doesn't, at least to Mabel's idea, it's like, oh, she doesn't want to know about my past. She sees me as Mabel and isn't so concerned about the bloody Mabel angle of things, and she's not so concerned about my past like everyone else is, like Cinda is in particular. So that's Mabel's situation that she's got to deal with. And then obviously picking up with last episode, we have everything with Oliver trying to decide, trying to find out about him and Will. Like, are they actually father and son? And now it's like, right, he's worried that his worst fears are come true. Not only that is Will's not his son, that Will is Teddy's son, so that's going to complicate things a lot. And I love him talking to that stranger beside him, and the guy's almost just like saying nothing to him. In a moment, like, Oliver finally gets up, you see the guy just kind of shaking his head because the guy's like, oh, Anyone else say, he's like, yeah, I might not be able to produce enough spit for the DNA test because my mouth is so dry. Is anyone else's mouth super dry? So I love it. But you kind of feel bad for him, especially because he was in the car with Mabel and Mabel and Charles, and he told that story about, he's like, yeah, I'm doing this project, and it was like, right, Will never really got, like, the communist elements to it, but it's like, there he was in the crowd, when it was time for the crowd to kind of connect, he was like saying, strike, like a little leftist communist, lefty communist, but it's like, yeah, they're like, no, everything's gonna be okay, it's gonna be fine, the DNA test is gonna be fine. I mean, probably not. Could be bad. It's like, and they're like, oh, thank God when the phone went off, because they're like, cool, we don't have to deal with that. And then Oliver's just like, cool, thanks, my supportive friends. So, I also love they got called in by, was it Detective Krebs, who was like, basically like, no, shut this shit down. I'm tired of you guys podcasting. He's saying, now I'm getting calls about the bird theory, about some damn bird or something. It's kind of like, And I love that, like, Cinda's like, don't lump me in the same group as them. Like, obviously, I could be very helpful, And obviously, she's meeting with that guy from Mabel's past who's claiming that Mabel cut off his finger and all, yada, 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 so on and so forth, right? What was that whole, the shit, because she messed it up. It's like, because she kept saying it the wrong way the entire podcast, and Poppy corrected her, and now Poppy kind of threw her off by telling her this is actually how it's pronounced. But Mabel's like, right, you'd rather tell tantalizing stories rather than the truth. And it's like, and then Oliver, yeah, because we wouldn't do that. I mean, we have, but not because we're trying to. It's like, just stop it, Oliver. You're not helping. Because they were contacting Detective Williams, because they were still under the impression the person that told them to get out of the building, they were in the impression like, okay, that's got to be Detective Williams, because going back to the wink, wink, nudge, nudge, she was like, no, that wasn't me. Why? Because they were assuming like whoever it was telling you to get out of the building did that on purpose, like that was Detective Williams trying to warn him about the cops coming or something like that. But it's like, no, it was the killer using that as kind of camouflage to sneak out potentially. So now they realize, like, wait, we've been texting with potentially the killer the entire time, and they'd even said, like, oh, we'll meet up with you and give you the evidence. Luckily, they heard from Detective Krebs, she's like, no, she's in Denver, so there's no way she could be trying to get the evidence from them and such. So, but using what they learned, using tactics from an episode of Brazos, fake out with some fake evidence. They plan on capturing the killer, also using a glitter bomb. And I love that Oliver's story of basically it's like, oh, my time in theater plus the long list of orgies I've been involved in teaches me has taught me, glitter's kind of hard to get rid of, and just Mabel's just got this disgusted look on her face like, oh, we don't need to hear about your sexploits, Oliver. But obviously they were so distracted with the conversation in the car that it's like, wait, oh, all these calls are like, oh, who are you talking to? Like the people from the local like women correction facility. And then Mabel's like, wait, don't tell me you're not talking to Janice. She's like, well, yeah, actually I am. He's like, yeah, I am. For him, it's like, yeah, he's never broken up with someone before. First, it's like, yeah, like first year in a relationship, it's about like, getting to know that person. Second year in a relationship is enjoying the relationship, and then the next 4 years spent is him trying to get out of a relationship. So probably with Lucy's mom, because we know that relationship lasted for 6 years, so it must have been a situation of he must have been trying to get out of that relationship because he used that very specific timetable. Because I guess it's like, right. And he just has a hard time backing out. I get it. I am someone who has a hard time saying no to people in the regards of just kind of like, I'm awkward and don't know how to like, he's like, yeah, I'm non-confrontational. So when I just kind of, instead of telling people no, that's something I've still got to work on. I've never had to worry about it relationship-wise. I mean, to be fair, I've only maybe ever broken up with one girlfriend. I mean, God, it's like, time does something to your memory, so you never like, it eventually turned into a mutual thing, but it was just kind of like, I think I'm the one that instigated it. Maybe not. I don't know. It is just that, regardless, it's not something I have a lot of experience with. This kind of my point. I've mainly been broken up with, for respective circumstances. So I thought that was just in general, like, once again, I feel like out of any character, I'm very much like Charles, and obviously Mabel has the biggest issue with it because it's like, Jen killed my friend. He's like, I know. It's like, yeah, of course Mabel has every right to have the most complicated feelings about this, because it's like, right, I get that you're lonely, and and it's like, right, you and Jen, it's like, I thought we were in a relationship. He was like, well, she tried to kill you and everyone in the building, so I just thought it was assumed. And he was like, yeah, I said the exact same thing, and it's like, and then obviously they were trying to catch the killer, like I said earlier, but the killer ended up, well, quote unquote killer, still don't know for sure, ended up getting away, so that's not good. But, because I don't believe it is the killer. I think it's someone else, like, messing with them, either trying to play detective on their own right, because I think either they're, like, a fan of this particular case, or they might be, I don't think it's one of the only murders in the building fans, because they're very, like, apparent about themselves, so I think if it was them, they would have shown that, but regardless. So whoever it is staying hidden, the ending and everything, we'll get to that in a second. But Mabel just needed time away, and I love the moment, like, Charles is like, oh, I'm gonna break up with you. He's like, actually, I don't need to. It's like, no, we just said you do need to. He's like, yeah, but I don't have to. I was like, okay, you're gonna get someone else? I thought he was gonna get Oliver to break up with her. It never crossed my mind until Jen was approaching the phone and everything, and the person was still turned around. I was like, it's sad, isn't it? And it ended up being, I was like, he got his body double to break up. I mean, it's like, right, Saz said it herself, like, time and time again, I'm there, I'm your double in life for the things you can't do physically and emotionally, and she has a script and everything, and Jen's like, wait, he sent you to break up, he's breaking up with me through you? And then, like, Saz delivers it in a way that Jen was initially not going to be all about it, but it's like, no, like, the fact is I'm breaking up with you. Like, I'm sorry, when you said you loved me, I didn't respond the way I should have. Like, we have to end this. It's not good for anybody. And then later on, just like, oh, the rest of this is pretty porny. You want me to keep going? Does it do something for you? And Jen's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, dude, don't tell me. Well, it's, this complicated history. Because it's so interesting, because last season, what did Saz say? Saz was looking for her Jan. And it's like history repeating itself, where it's like every time Charles, like, loses, like, at least the situation was Saz and Charles' previous girlfriend, like, his previous girlfriend cheated on, not Lucy's mom, but, like, the person he was dating at the time while he was on Brazos. She ended up cheating on her with, cheated on him with, Saz, and then obviously she did the same thing to Saz, and they ended up breaking up or whatever. Well, because she left, I don't remember, I think it was like an affair type of situation, like it happened behind his back. I think she definitely broke up, I think that happened first, and then she broke up with Charles, and then got with Saz, and apparently they were married, and now divorced and kind of going to separate. Oh, they were married, right? I think she said that last season. Either way, it's just like, now it's like, oh, you didn't just get your own Jan, you got his Jan, but it's like, it's very befitting, and it's like, well, you also don't have the complicated thing of, you can actually be with Jan. I mean, I think Charles is like, he did at one point in time love her, but knowing who she is and what she's done, it just makes it harder to be in a relationship with that type of person. And it's just like, he has complicated feelings for her, because it's like, right, he is someone that's kind of been alone and probably never, doesn't do well to get out of relationships, like, we're past the whole, happy to be in this relationship phase. It's just a whole, I'm having trouble getting out of this phase of the relationship because I don't do well with confrontation. So there's that whole element to it. But, I love that whole bit. That was so good. Other than that, there is the Mabel situation. So she went to go see Alice because she needed to kind of clear her head. And Alice is working on her latest thing that she said Mabel inspired her. And lo and behold, the moment she walks in, you see a Zoe and Tim Kono lookalike. You're like, oh no, we're not. And then it's like, oh, she recreated your apartment. I'm like, oh god, this is twisted. And there she is wearing a wig and your clothes. She's the Mabel of this performance. I'm like, and it's like, recreating Bunny's murder. I'm like, that's super fucked up. It's like, oh yeah, let me like make an artistic representation of my, I guess we could say girlfriend's trauma in multiple ways. It's like, oh yeah, here's two of your friends that were murdered. Yeah, so here's let me throw it in your face. And oh, your most recent trauma that you're currently dealing with, yeah, let me do that too. And she's like, no, I learned that this therapy thing about she's trying to justify by being like, hey, just like that piece of you that you got to destroy, I'm kind of doing the same thing, like helping you through it from a therapeutic standpoint. It's like, no, you make that excuse, but I don't believe it. So it's like, I didn't expect that. I figured they'd have a bumpy road. I figured things like she'd be a suspect and she turned out not to be the killer, but they would still go their separate ways. It's like, I definitely see them going their separate ways now after all of this. But tying the end of the episode in with the whole Poppy thing, which I love that, Mabel tried to, hey, the way the way Cinda treats you, it's like, no, like, yeah, she threw a stapler at me and missed, but then picked it up and then tried to throw it at me again to make sure it hit me. I'm like, Jesus, like, it's like, yeah, you should stand up for yourself. It's like, that's a harassment in the workplace, being treated terribly, but she's treating it as, and, sadly people do treat it as, like, you kind of just have to, like, grit your teeth and bear with it because it's about paying your dues, because she's hoping to put in all this good work so that she can get her own stuff started. And because Poppy is the one that does everything. She's not just an assistant, she's a producer, and like apparently the best producer ever. Like, she's the real Cinda. She's the one, everything that Cinda kind of, like, Cinda's like the face of it. She's the one that speaks, but Poppy's the producer that kind of runs everything. We kind of learned that last season, but we really lean into it even more now in this particular episode. And Mabel was like, you need to stand up for yourself. She treats you bad. It's like, no, she doesn't. And then she's like, she kind of goes, here, Poppy, kind of treating her and like whistling like she's a dog. She's like, that's an inside joke. It's like, Jesus, Poppy. And then later on, she's like, oh, can I get a promotion? I was like, she's not going to give you a promotion. But she's like, yeah, well, I figured she'd be like, oh, yeah, we'll talk about it. Sure, so on and so forth, right? And it's like, oh, yeah. And then, like, she admits later, oh, no, I was just saying that in front of Luis. Well, you put me in, asking about that in front of Luis. I was like, Luis doesn't seem too butthurt about her asking for a promotion. Cause like, I guess it's like, cause at first I was like, oh, maybe she's like, you put me in an awkward position because now, Luis is almost gonna be like, oh, like but it's like, no, Luis seemed happy for Poppy. But it's like, no, it's because I didn't want to say you're not gonna get a promotion because then now I have to, cause I don't want Luis to think like, oh, he won't get a promotion eventually cause he won't. But I'm, you put me in that awkward position cause it's like, yeah, you're a great assistant and blah, 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 giving her the spiel and says like, right, there's the job I used to work at the Post. She's like, the best advice someone gave me was basically don't be too good at the job you don't want. Ugh. But it's which I get, it's the most asshole thing to say, but basically it's like, don't be too good at the job you don't want. You don't want to be an assistant, you want to be something more. Don't be too good at it. But it's like, she had to be good at it so that you'd hire her. Now because she thinks of you as a mentor, even though you're a complete and utter asshole, which mentors can be assholes. And now Poppy's like, right, everything about Cinda is a liar. I think she dropped out of college and none of her teeth are real. I'm like, Jesus. So now it begs the question, the other like podcast she's well known for, like It's Not All Okay in Oklahoma or whatever, seems like that might be complete and utter BS. Cause with the whole guy that that talked about Bloody Mabel and stuff like that, he even said like, oh, she deep fried my finger after she cut it off. He was always like handsy and she pushed him and his finger went into a meat slicer. It's like, yeah, that's what happened. So, and said that he's like a pathological liar and stuff like that. So, but then Mabel's on the train at the end and sees someone approaching her. Truth be told, is obviously out of context it looks bad because it's like, oh my god, Mabel stabbed a guy because she thought he was a killer. But no, she didn't stab him with a knitting needle. What ended up happening is one of two things. One, the person came up with her a knitting needle because they're not the killer, they are someone obsessed with all of this, and they wanted a Bloody Mabel situation. They're like, oh my god, like, could you sign this for me? Like, they're a big fan of Bloody Mabel, and they're just awkward about it or something, or like they wanted to be in a situation where it's like, that's why they probably had the knitting needle being like, oh, can you stab me? Or maybe she thought like, oh my god, you're gonna hurt me. She grabs it and tries to defend herself. It's not what it seems. It's not like, oh my gosh, she just stabbed a person. It's just set up to be that way. But I think, truth be told, it was someone that's following them. She thought might have been the killer, but they aren't in contact with the killer. It's just someone obsessed with this case that's been in the middle of things. So it has to be someone from the building then for them to be able to text all of them, get out of the building, who would have their number. So it has to be someone they know. I was like, well, not unless there's a chance it was, well, because I'm trying to think, did the person look to them? Because I was like, because I feel like if it could be anyone, because I don't think he was out then, because I think they were still locked up potentially. I was about to say, not unless it's Theo covered up, because he can't go out in public because, well, people know his face now after everything that's going down between him and his dad, and maybe that's his way to, like, maybe he wants to make up for things and he wants to help clear Mabel's name or something like that, or he legitimately wants to help or something. I don't know. Because like I said, I don't think the person that she met with was Theo. It could have been, but that I'm talking not just at the end of the episode, but I'm talking about Bunny, at the restaurant or whatever. Like, it might not have been Theo. That's who I assume, but I don't know. We'll ultimately have to wait and see what happens, but I definitely feel like that ending scene obviously wasn't what we thought it was, but like I said, we'll have to wait and see what ends up happening next. Really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.